And welcome to the Pride of Detroit PODcast, prideofdetroit.com, Pride of Detroit on Twitter, Pride of Detroit on Facebook. You know where to find us. Download the PODcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you get podcasts. I think that's the word everyone's going for now, is wherever you get your podcasts. I don't like that. It's like, you should if you, in case you don't know where your podcasts are at, we got to let you know.
It's 2022. Live, people know where to get their podcasts, right?
Do they?
Do you know where your podcasts are? It's 2022.
It's 2022. Do you know where your podcasts are at? Live on twitch.tv/Pride of Detroit. If you know, you know. We are the Pride of Detroit PODcast, here to talk about the best Lions coverage anywhere on the damn planet. And I am Chris Perfett, the adequate host, as always, at Chris Perfett on Twitter. And this week on the PODcast, we are going to talk about a draft prospect that I think we've kind of forgotten about, that is very much so in play at 2, but nobody seems to want to admit that he's at play at number 2, and is maybe trying to figure out reasons to not take him at number 2. We're talking about Tibbs. We'll talk about him a little bit. We're talking about some of the comments from Brad Holmes of the ownership meetings. We've got a mailbag, but first, the rest of the crew. Jeremy Reisman, the fearless leader at Detroit Online, Mr. Mustache El Grande himself, about to dye it blue. I've got from good sources that next week it will be Honolulu blue.
Maybe. Blue and silver.
Maybe.
Blue and silver.
Blue and silver.
Yeah,
very, very important. We're bisecting the colors this
we'll
time.
See. That we do have a good guest lined up for next week's. We have a good one lined up for this week's first bite. We have like one that I'm really looking forward to next week. So I'm a little bit nervous about having a colored mustache for that one, but I think knowing him, I think he'll be game.
Yeah.
Right, Ryan?
Ryan Matthews at Ryan_POD. Is that right, Ryan?
Yeah. I mean, I just want to send a message out to everybody out there. Shoot your shot, jump in those DMs. The water might be cold at first, but it'll warm up.
I like this tease.
I never get to know who these are. Like you guys get these, and I'm like, wait a minute, we have who? Who do we have? I don't.
Well,
it's a mystery even to me, the one who's supposed to be running the podcast.
It's draft related. That's all I'll say. Okay. That's all I'll throw out there.
We've had some good draft guests this year too, because we've had Bucky Brooks and we've had on people from the Athletic. We've had good guests.
Dane is a huge guest. It's not Dane. We've already had Dane. We might reach out to Dane again, but it's not Dane.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
We've had Dane. We've had Bucky Brooks. We've had some good people. Anyway, let's not nose around too much. We want to jump right into it. So Kayvon Thibodeaux. So the Bruce Feldman had. What was it, Jeremy? An article out this week.
It was a mock draft that he.
It was a mock draft.
With every pick, he threw in comments from people inside the NCAA and some NFL guys. They're all anonymous sources, so do with that information what you will. But yeah, go ahead.
And these were these were some of the comments. I just wanted to get to some of them because I feel like this is kind of setting the table for us to talk about Kayvon Thibodeaux. We've talked a lot about Malik Willis and Aiden Hutchinson. And I've even managed to get in some Kyle Hamilton talk because we've tried to open up people to the idea of a safety. But Kayvon Thibodeaux, who was, before this draft even got started, was the number one edge rusher, maybe the number one pick overall, now suddenly getting a lot of this. And to these comments Jeremy is talking about, I didn't think he was consistent with effort. He didn't have much success early in our game. He kind of shut it down. I don't see it. He's not good. He's not great. He was a non-factor in so many games. He's an independent contractor. His first step is unbelievable. You just wonder how important is football to him? ? So this is a fascinating track I always see every year, Jeremy, Ryan, that we've always had questions at guys at the top of the draft about how much are you really loving football? It's an age-old question. It happens in a lot of different walks of life. This idea that, it's not enough to be good at your job. You have to just you have to really want it, man. You have to really love it. And by love, you mean go through all the struggles, go through all the pain, go through all the travail, go through all kind of stuff that are kind of shitty. But, you know, you have to love it to show that, you know, it's the powers that be that you deserve to be at the top of the pile, which is not a great way to go about life, but it's apparently our great American way of working, is to show that you just want to just shiv the other guy that much harder. And that happens a lot. But at the same time, I understand that there's probably some genuine concern for Kayvon Thibodeaux. And I think, Jeremy, you kind of teed it up on, like, you know, it's the difference of taking plays off, which happens a lot in football, versus the quote unquote other interests in football.
Yeah. And with Kayvon, it's hard to kind of separate those two based on some of these kind of anonymous sources. Like a lot of it is the former. You know, he's into cryptocurrency and all this other nonsense that to me doesn't matter. I don't care about that. If he has interest in doing, you know, stuff off the field, I don't think that's necessarily going to get in the way of him as a football player. There are plenty of people who have multiple interests. Ndamukong Suh is one of those, and a lot of people I've heard kind of compare character to him in terms of not necessarily the aggressiveness on the field, but in terms of just like the way he carries himself off the field. But I mean, you said it. One of those quotes was clearly from a college coach. It said, "I didn't think he was consistent with effort. He didn't have much success early in our game, and he kind of shut it down." That is a quote that I'm concerned with, because that is not about having interest in football. That's about performance on the field. And so, you know, I think the whole reason we're setting the table for this discussion is because Friday was Oregon's pro day and the Lions showed up in droves. They had 7.
Yeah, Brad Holmes himself was there. A bunch of their scouts, yes.
And you know, we saw them chatting with him. We saw Chris Spielman there and all that. And so they need to suss that out, because if you're giving up on plays, if you aren't all about football, not that you can't have a personal life too, but if you aren't kind of that hard-working, gritty mentality, like, you're not going to be a cultural fit here. You just aren't. And I don't know. I can't speak to Kayvon Thibodeaux as a person, and I'm not tuned in enough. I've never met the man. I don't want to judge a person based off of interviews. The tape to me is pretty darn good. I don't see as much of the giving up as some of these other people do, but at the same time, I'm not as in it as a college coach who literally went against him. So there's questions here that are legit. There are questions here that I don't think are legit, but I think there is significant smoke here that I'm glad that the Lions at least did a ton of due diligence last Friday to get to know the guy.
Yeah, I posed the question on Saturday in an open thread. You know, I asked, do you want the Lions to draft Kayvon Thibodeaux? And I was surprised at how split it was.
Yeah.
You know, just because, as Chris mentioned, this is a guy who throughout the entire college offseason, almost throughout the entire college season itself, was the de facto number 1 pick. And, you know, in over the course of since November, right? So, you know, over the course of just a handful of months, the narrative has shifted so much on him. And I just find it really puzzling. I find it, you know, to be kind of in the same vein as not that they had the same concerns, but a lot of the Justin Fields talk from last year, like a lot of like, hey, this guy's a legit quarterback, but because he belonged in such a, you know, loaded quarterback class, and add to it, you know, the concerns, right? Like that all came up from anonymous sources of, you know, goes through his reads and, you know, has trouble making it through progressions, and remember some people who put names to it, right?
Well, I was going to say, remember, and I was just reminded this from a different Lions podcast. Remember the Seizures stuff that came up like a week before the draft?
Yeah, I think I do.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. I don't remember the exact thing, but like that, I think that's my point, is like sometimes either like someone is like purposely throwing shade or bringing something up right towards the end of the draft prospect, because like suddenly teams don't have enough time to like do research and figure out that stuff. And so it does feel like maybe there's a little bit of sabotage going on, but at the same time, I don't know. There's enough smoke here that I don't know if that's what's happening or not.
Chris, how telling is it that the Lions basically sent everybody to Oregon's pro day that really is involved in the decision-making process. Like having Brad Holmes there, I think was a big deal.
Yeah, it either belies that you have a lot of interest in the person, or it belies that you have a lot of concerns in the person and you need boots on the ground to kind of look. It can cleave one way or another. It can either cleave a lot of interest or it can cleave a lot of questions. Both, as I think the word again from Jeremy is due diligence. I like the word. I like a lot of legal terms. That's one in there. As far as like the stuff outside of football, again, like that's kind of why I hesitate a bit on this, because like, as you said, Ryan, we've seen it with other guys. I've always referenced how much I love that people try to bring it up against Myles Garrett, and how much Mel Kiper lost his mind defending Myles Garrett about how much he likes dinosaurs and Motown, and that's fine. That's totally fine to have other interests. And crypto is like, I mean, half the guys in the league right now are getting their contracts in crypto, and Des Bryant can't go 3 weeks without his NFT wallet getting scammed. like this is something that's going to happen no matter what, guys. But that's a tale as old as football. Guys in on the latest financial crazes to try to make some money besides football. To Jeremy's point, it is more the stuff about taking plays off. And even, of Lions fans, you talk about how very quickly people would turn away from it. And I saw people even during the last season with them. I think part of that was maybe people wanting to elevate. They wanted to find reasons to put Thibodeaux down because they wanted to elevate Hutchinson in their mind. But they were pointing out a lot of plays where like they were watching Oregon late season where it's like, yeah, is he kind of like giving up on a play? Maybe. I don't think it's though. Like, I understand though that it's a grueling process, and we know all about college, and we know how quickly it is that college, if you get hurt in college, how badly your stock can tank and how badly that can ruin your future finances, that I'm not as worried about him taking off plays in college. I just would hope that that's not something that's going to happen, once you've hit the pros itself. And that's kind of where the big question is. Like, I'm fine with him taking out plays at Oregon while he's unpaid, but that can't happen once a team puts in the draft pick for you.
My only crack in that logic is like, whether you like it or not, your entire college tape is your resume, and maybe you don't realize that when you first step on campus, but it's true, because
I understand that
nitpicked to death.
I understand that, Jeremy, but how many guys have we seen their finances have been ruined because they don't take off the plays and then they tear an ACL?
I mean, but that sort of stuff is just random that comes with it. It's not that
it's random, but everyone loves doing that on Twitter. All the NFL insiders, all the college writers, all the guys at Athletic love going out there and saying, "Oh, this is why guys shouldn't play in bowl games."
Well, I don't mind skipping bowl games. I don't mind skipping.
Yeah, but come on. Why can't we extend that logic though? It's like, oh, if you take off a bowl game, that speaks badly to you. That's acceptable, but not taking off plays where like, and it's not like taking off a play ruins your team's chances. When you take off a play, it's clear that sometimes you can't make an impact on that play. And you're just diving in just to make sure that nobody says you're not taking off that play. Like that's not an actual logical move in football. That's just optics.
I might be rounding the edges a little bit here, but I feel like a similar player, like I mentioned Justin Fields, but I think that there's a better example of this. And I think Jadeveon Clowney is a great example for Myles Garrett.
He's the one that comes up in a lot of comps. I've seen scouts comp Thibodeaux to Clowney a lot. Obviously not the same player, but kind of the same, like everything we're talking about. To your point, I'll let you continue. I'm sorry, but like, yeah, Clowney comes up.
Right. Yeah. And I think from the aspect of has a great sophomore season, right? And then the season where he's supposed to kind of plant his flag as the number one pick, he has some injuries and, he doesn't have the best season and he slides a little bit down the draft board. When a year prior to that, everybody thought he was the surefire number one pick. And I think that there's a little bit of that to Kayvon Thibodeaux. I think that there's a little bit of prospect fatigue. But there are questions. And I think overall what this speaks to, because Jeremy, I just double checked it, but right now it was 60% yes, 40% no on do you want the Lions to draft Kayvon Thibodeaux? And that was out of 4,500 total votes. That article had 319 comments. Articles don't get that many comments unless you're talking about COVID or kneeling for the flag. It's like that's how divisive I think this discussion is.
But to expand that, like I think you could put out that poll for any of these top 4 prospects, and
right.
the same thing. Like Malik Willis will probably double that, all that. Even Aiden Hutchinson. Like I know the consensus now is Aiden Hutchinson is probably the best guy in the draft. But before we had reached that conclusion, he was actually quite a polarizing prospect, and you can imagine why in the state of Michigan. And obviously Kyle Hamilton is another polarizing debate. All of this debate, but if we can, I want to shift this a little bit more to the conversation as Kayvon Thibodeaux as an actual player, because
a schematic, is he a schematic fit for the Lions
right,
too?
Because I still think he probably has the highest ceiling of maybe anyone in this draft. If you're including positional value, maybe Malik Willis is the one exception there, but yeah. But I mean, like that, this dude has all the athletic, like he is built exactly like you'd want in an edge rusher. The only person who really matches him is Tavon Walker, but we can talk about him. Kayvon, to me, like the quick area quickness, right? Like his whatever his 10-yard split was, 159 or whatever it was. His first, everyone talks about his first step, and if he can just learn to rely on that speed a little bit more and develop a little bit more of his pass rushing moves, I think he can be in the conversation of elite edge rusher, a guy who's getting all pros and things like that, which is something that we've all seemed to have agreed does not exist in this draft. Like a lot of these guys' ceilings is maybe a Pro Bowl here and there. I think Kayvon Thibodeaux, if he lands in the right spot, lands with a coaching staff that knows how to pull it out of him, wink, wink, Detroit Lions potentially, if they can get his head straight and eliminate any of those taking off plays or whatever character concerns you have over the guy, I think highest ceiling. And that's why I think I'd be pretty happy if Kayvon Thibodeaux was at number 2 pick, because that means the Lions not only did a character check and believed they can handle that guy, but also I do think he has the highest ceiling, and I think the Lions have a good enough coaching staff to get him as close to that ceiling as possible.
And I want Chris to get into this, but I think another advantage, another leg up that the Lions might have that another team might not is who's their right tackle? A guy who played with Kayvon Thibodeaux.
Yep.
Penei Sewell. Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
They have
same
some
room.
in-house intel. But Chris, I wanted to give you a comp that Danny Kelly of The Ringer gave Kayvon Thibodeaux. I'm not sure if you saw this, but all of his comparisons are just fun. He says,
I probably didn't see this. I've been really engrossed with Carolina basketball this week, but go on. Yeah.
So he says shades of Khalil Mack and a T-Rex and an F-14.
Very interesting to go the F-14. I'm assuming the F-14 is like half, probably. What is that? Is that either Top Gun or you just like the variable wings? I think it's the variable wings.
We might have to ask him.
We might have to. I think the only concern I have then is we're talking about fit.
Right.
Lions seem to be, and I hate to do this 3-4 versus 4-3 because apparently someone got mad at me on Twitter for dismissing the whole question. But the Lions do seem to be heading more for 4-3 base for a lot of their schemes. And Thibodeaux kind of seems more like a 3-4. He seems like he's more kind of an edge in the sense that, he's prototypical defensive end, but also outside linebacker. Right. So I think that's the only, from a fit point, that's the only question I would really have. He did start 2019. He was a lot of he was just a pass rusher. 2020, he started to round out well. And by 2021, I don't think I have any concerns with him stopping the run. It's certainly not his strength, but Lions, I would rather crush the pass than worry about the run too much.
And I do think it bears repeating that the Lions aren't just going to be a 4-down base 100% of the time. They are going to split pretty, I wouldn't say evenly, but I think we're still talking 60-40, 65-35.
Yeah, this is fluid now. You are not always in a 4-3 base.
Yeah,
or 3-4 base.
I do think Thibodeaux has a little bit more versatility than a lot of people. I don't think he is just a pure 3-4. I think he can put his hand into the dirt a little bit. I think he'd be okay with that. And And I think, listen, like we mentioned this a little bit on the green room the other day. Like the Lions have specifically said they are going to tailor their scheme to the players' talents. And half the reason they are moving to more 4 down fronts is because they believe that the guys that they currently have are better fit for that. And so if they have Kayvon Thibodeaux, well, then maybe they even that out. Maybe they scale that back a little bit, and they say like, well, listen, Kayvon's the guy that we need to build around on the defensive line because he's the only one that's probably going to be around for certain in 3 or 4 years. So then the conversation changes again. There's plenty of offseason to go where they don't have to be stuck in their plan to go to more 4 down fronts if they had a guy like Kayvon.
I want to continue this conversation. We need to take a break. I want to continue this conversation about what risks you'd be willing to take over Thibodeaux, because I think that's ultimately the question at the end of the day. Because I think a lot of people are nitpicking at Thibodeaux, but I don't think like you're going to like some of the other options unless you're like me or Ryan. You like very specific guys from very specific other positions. So I want to talk about that. We will get into the Brad Holmes media session we had down at in Florida at the ownership meetings. Jeremy was there. He had an airplane beer and everything. We'll talk with him about that. And we got some mailbag questions we'll get to in later the show, but we're going to take a quick break here. We'll chat with Twitch chat during our break. That'll go up later in another podcast. But for right now, we'll be right back on the Pride of Detroit POD cast.